Let's go Dolphins! A storm is brewing within the Miami Dolphins organization. Rumors are swirling that Stephen Ross may have already handpicked the next general manager, and believe me, if this is confirmed, it could either propel a title chase or plunge the Dolphins into another cycle of chaos. So, pay attention, because what I'm about to reveal is deeper than you imagine. The timing of these changes, the names being considered behind the scenes in the league, and the unexpected rise of a surprising internal candidate, all of this is leading to a decision that could define the next 10 years of Dolphins football. But before we proceed, if you're a true Dolphins fan, the kind of fan who's weathered disappointments, narrow defeats, and still proudly wears the aqua and orange, click the like button right now. And if you believe this team has what it takes to reach the Super Bowl, leave a comment saying, "Go Dolphins! We can get there!" Now, let's get to the full story. Earlier this week, the Dolphins made a massive decision, letting go of their co-directors of player personnel, Adam Ingram and Anthony Hunt. This followed the shocking firing of longtime general manager Chris Grier just a week and a half earlier. For context, Grier had been with the Dolphins since 2000 and was GM since 2016. Ingram had been around since 1999, and Hunt even longer, since 1994. These were some of the longest tenured figures in the organization, and their exit signals a total break from the past. The message from Stephen Ross and the Dolphins ownership is clear. It's time to wipe the slate clean. But here's where things get really interesting. NFL insider Benjamin Albright, who's usually well connected though more with the Broncos, hinted that these moves suggest the Dolphins have already decided on their next general manager. And that's where the debate explodes. Let's unpack that. If Miami already made their decision, then logic says it must be someone currently inside the building, likely Champ Kelly, the interim GM. But here's the problem. Champ Kelly only joined the Dolphins in the spring and has barely had time to make an impact, let alone prove he's the right person to lead this franchise into a new era. His trade deadline performance didn't inspire much confidence either. While trading Jalen Phillips was a smart move by some accounts, his hesitation to move on from others like Minkah Fitzpatrick or Rasul Douglas left questions about his vision and aggressiveness. So if not Champ Kelly, then who? That's where the real list of contenders comes in, and the Dolphins have no shortage of intriguing names on their radar. At the top of that list is Ed Dodds, currently the assistant GM for the Indianapolis Colts. Dodds is a name that's come up in GM discussions for nearly a decade. He brings a trench-first mentality from a Colts organization that has consistently built strong offensive and defensive lines. Miami desperately needs that kind of foundational thinking, especially after years of struggling in the trenches. Coming in strong at number 2 is Chad Alexander, assistant GM for the Los Angeles Chargers. Alexander has a background as the Jets' director of player personnel and was a longtime scout for the Ravens. People around the Chargers organization believe he's ready to take the next step, and he's credited with helping shape the roster that supported Justin Herbert's rise. He's seen as a future GM, maybe the future GM of the Miami Dolphins. At number 3 is Alec Halaby of the Philadelphia Eagles. Halaby is a fascinating candidate, not just because of his Harvard background but because of his deep experience with the Eagles, one of the most successful and consistently competitive franchises in recent years. He's been there since 2007 and was promoted to assistant GM in 2022. He's a strategic thinker who's already been in the running for GM positions with the Jets, Panthers, and Commanders. Coming from the Howie Roseman School of Roster Building gives him serious credibility. And then there's Josh Williams, number 4 on this list, who is currently the director of scouting for the San Francisco 49ers. Williams has been with the 49ers since 2011 and recently moved into a more powerful role that includes overseeing both college and pro scouting and even assisting with contract negotiations. He was a finalist for the Jaguars GM role not long ago, and his reputation is steadily growing. Mike Greenberg, the assistant GM for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, lands at number 5. No, not the ESPN host. This Greenberg has been quietly influential in building both the Tom Brady-led Super Bowl squad and the post-Brady teams that have stayed competitive under Baker Mayfield. His resume includes helping the Bucs navigate multiple rebuilds, showing the kind of adaptability that could serve Miami well. All right, let's dive straight into the continuation. The Miami Dolphins front office overhaul isn't just a story about who's in and who's out. It's a defining moment that could shape the trajectory of this franchise for the next decade. Stephen Ross is known for being hands-on, and his involvement in these sweeping changes hints at a desire to do more than just patch holes. This is about legacy. It's about making the bold moves now to stop being a playoff tease and start becoming a perennial Super Bowl contender. But that ambition comes with serious risk. One of the key concerns is timing. The Dolphins are entering one of the most critical off-seasons in franchise history. The roster is packed with talent. Tua Tagovailoa is still on a rookie deal. For now, Tyreek Hill is a game changer, and the defense has cornerstone pieces. The window to contend is open. But if Miami delays too long in hiring the right GM, they risk missing out on free agency opportunities, draft prep, and possibly creating uncertainty within the locker room and coaching staff. And let's not ignore the Mike McDaniel factor. He's innovative, player-friendly, and forward-thinking, but like any head coach, he needs a general manager who shares his vision, or at the very least, won't undermine it. The chemistry between coach and GM can make or break a franchise. Think of successful pairings across the league: Sean McVay and Les Snead in LA, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch in San Francisco. The Dolphins need that same alignment if they're going to take the leap. That's why someone like Ed Dodds makes so much sense. His resume is filled with examples of collaboration, development, and long-term team building. He's not a splashy name, but that's what makes him appealing. He's steady, calculated, and understands how to balance a roster. If Miami truly wants to build from the inside out, starting with the offensive and defensive lines, Dodds is the guy who can bring that philosophy to life. On the other hand, someone like Alec Halabi represents a totally different direction, one that leans heavily into analytics, strategic resource management, and innovation. Coming from Howie Roseman's Eagles pipeline means Halabi has been surrounded by some of the best minds in football operations. That Eagles front office is known for maximizing draft capital, making smart trades, and finding ways to stay competitive despite roster turnover. Miami could benefit immensely from that kind of model. But that brings us to the elephant in the room, Champ Kelly. If Ross and company are seriously considering promoting him from interim to full-time GM, they better be absolutely certain. Because while he might be popular within the building, popularity doesn't win championships. The decisions made at the trade deadline, the reluctance to offload certain assets, and the lack of long-term planning reflected in some of those choices don't exactly scream championship vision. If they commit to Kelly now, it's going to be a massive gamble. Meanwhile, the rest of the NFL isn't waiting. Other franchises are already doing their due diligence, lining up interviews, and preparing for a very competitive hiring cycle. Teams like the Chargers, Bears, and Panthers are all expected to be active in the GM and head coaching markets. If the Dolphins are serious about landing a top-tier candidate, they need to move with purpose. Because if they drag their feet and miss out, they'll only have themselves to blame. There's also the question of roster control. Some GM candidates may want final say over personnel. Will Ross be willing to give that up? Will McDaniel be okay with a GM who pushes back on coaching preferences? These are high-stakes negotiations that need to be handled delicately. And for fans, this moment is crucial. We've seen this franchise hover in the middle tier for too long. Too good to blow it all up, not good enough to go all the way. What Dolphins fans deserve is a front office with a plan. A clear, consistent vision that prioritizes building through the draft, making smart free agent signings, and most importantly, winning meaningful games in December and January. The Dolphins have the resources. They have the fan base. They have the roster. Now, they just need the right general manager to bring it all together. So as we wait for the official decision, possibly in late January, the speculation will only intensify. Will it be someone experienced like Ed Dodds? A rising star like Chad Alexander or Josh Williams? A strategic thinker like Halabi? Or will Ross go all in on youth with someone like John McKay? Whoever it is, they'll be stepping into a high-pressure job with immediate expectations. The clock is ticking. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel so you don't miss the next update. Smash that like button if you believe the Dolphins are just one great GM away from making a serious Super Bowl run. And don't forget to check out the videos appearing on screen right now for even more Dolphins analysis and news.